I couldn't breathe. My lungs felt as if they were filling with cement as I stood in the back of the conference room watching my 6 months of effort. My ideas, my solutions, my 3 a.m. breakthroughs being showcased by people who couldn't even describe how the algorithms functioned. And there was Warren, my boss, grinning proudly as if he'd personally crafted every line of code in the proposal. As you can see, our team at Helios has created a groundbreaking approach, he said, gesturing to everyone except me. My name is Avery Merrick, 36, and until that moment I'd spent 8 years of my life believing that exceptional work would eventually be acknowledged. Before I go on, if you're watching this from anywhere in the world, tell me where in the comments. And please subscribe if you haven't already. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. I was the only female senior developer at Helios Innovations, which made me both a token and a target. I'd learned to operate in that uneasy space to work twice as hard just to be seen as half as capable. But this project was different. The Meridian contract was the biggest opportunity our firm had ever chased. $5.8 million to build an AI-driven supply chain management system that could save their global operations millions more every year. When the project first arrived, nobody wanted it. Too complex, too many uncertainties, unrealistic timeline. Warren had nearly thrown the brief at me during a staff meeting. Avery, see if you can make sense of this mess. I remembered the dismissive tone, the unspoken expectation that I'd fail. My male colleagues traded those looks, the ones that said, "Better her than us." For 6 months, I lived that project. Canceled my trip to my cousin's wedding, missed my nephew's birthday, worked through pneumonia that left me coughing blood into tissues I kept hidden in my desk drawer. I built that system from the ground up, solving problems that industry leaders had called technically impossible just months earlier. The night I finally cracked the distribution algorithm, the one that would cut Meridian's shipping costs by 41%, I was alone in the office at 2:17 a.m. I remember calling my mom, hands trembling with excitement, trying to explain it in simple terms. She didn't grasp the technical breakthrough, but she understood my tears of relief. "They'll have to recognize your worth now, honey," she'd said. 2 weeks before the presentation, I noticed something changing. Warren started scheduling alignment meetings about the Meridian presentation that somehow never included me. Darren Frost from Business Development began asking detailed questions about my code. Celia Vaugh, who hadn't contributed a single component to the project, was suddenly reviewing all deliverables. I told myself this was normal final preparation, everyone making sure they understood the solution before the big presentation. Then I found the slide deck. I hadn't been asked to prepare it, which should have been my first warning. I opened it out of curiosity while working late again and froze as I scrolled through 42 pages presenting my work without once mentioning my name. The presenter notes showed that Darren would outline the technical architecture. Marcus would walk through the implementation strategy. Warren would present the innovative algorithm that served as the centerpiece of the entire solution. My centerpiece, my innovation. I confronted Warren the next morning, trying to keep my voice steady as I pointed out the omission. "Avery," he said, not even lifting his eyes from his phone. "This is an executive presentation. We need our strongest communicators leading it. You're more of a behind-the-scenes contributor, aren't you? You're not exactly comfortable in the spotlight, but it's my work," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. He finally glanced up, his expression the perfect mix of condescension and artificial concern. "It's Helios's work. We're a team, remember? And teams succeed together." Then the blow. "Besides, you're not polished enough for the C-suite yet. The way you dress, your presentation style, it's just not executive ready." I walked out of his office feeling like I'd been slapped. 8 years at this company, a master's degree from Carnegie Mellon. I'd sacrificed relationships, health, any sense of work-life balance, and I wasn't polished enough. Which brings me back to that conference room where I stood against the wall, unseen, watching everyone else claim credit for my work. Raylel Takahashi, Meridian's CEO, sat at the head of the table, flanked by her executive team. She asked sharp, precise questions that my team stumbled through answering, and the distribution algorithm, the 41% reduction, looks extraordinary. But how do you handle weather pattern disruptions in the Southeast Asian corridor? She asked. Warren looked at Darren. Darren looked at Marcus. Marcus cleared his throat. Well, we've integrated several variables and we're using a modified Bayesian approach. I cut in from the back of the room, unable to watch the disaster unfold any longer. The algorithm adapts to meteorological data in real time, with fallback protocols that initiate alternative routes based on predictive modeling rather than reactive adjustments. The room fell silent. 20 heads turned toward me, most of my colleagues wearing expressions of shock or irritation. But Raylel Takahashi only looked intrigued. And you are? She asked. Before I could reply, Warren jumped in. That's Avery, one of our developers who assisted with some of the coding elements. Some of the coding elements? Something in me snapped. 6 months of work. My innovation? My solution reduced to some of the coding elements. Actually, I said, stepping forward, my heart pounding so hard I felt it in my fingertips. I designed and built the entire system architecture. The distribution algorithm is based on my research from last year's white paper on adaptive supply chain dynamics. I wrote every line of code in the core modules and personally solved the Southeast Asian weather pattern issue you just referenced. The silence that followed was suffocating. Warren's face had turned a shade of red I'd never seen before. Raylel Takahashi set down her pen. Interesting. So, you're the architect of this solution? Yes, I said simply. Then perhaps you should be the one presenting it, she replied, her gaze shifting pointedly toward Warren. What happened next still replays in my mind like a slow-motion collision. Warren laughed, actually laughed, and said, Avery tends to exaggerate her contributions. She's valuable, but this was absolutely a team effort led by our senior staff. I felt lightheaded, as if the room itself were tipping beneath me. 8 years of being minimized solidified in that moment. I'd been foolish to believe this time would be different. Raylel wasn't watching Warren anymore. She was studying me. Her eyes, sharp, assessing, seemed to cut through the entire power dynamic in the room. In that case, she said, still focusing on me, I have a simple request. I'd like Miss Merrick to walk us through the technical documentation right now. Warren's smile faltered. We hadn't planned to go into that depth today. I insist, Raylel said, her tone leaving no room for debate. If this was truly a team effort, then anyone on the team should be capable of explaining the core architecture. She turned to me. Miss Merrick, would you? For the next 40 minutes, I walked through every part of the system. Architecture decisions, trade-offs, the innovations that made it distinct. I answered each question with a confidence born from knowing every inch of what I'd created. No one interrupted. No one corrected me. They couldn't. When I finished, Raylel nodded thoughtfully. Thank you for that clarification. She faced her team. I think we've seen everything we needed. I assumed that would be the end of it. A brief, hollow victory that would change nothing. Warren would retaliate. Helios's culture wouldn't shift. But as the meeting concluded, Raylel approached me directly. Miss Merrick, I'd like you to stay behind for a moment. My team filed out, Warren shooting me a look that promised consequences. Once the room was empty except for Raylel and her CFO, she closed the door. That was quite illuminating, she said. I have one more question for you. The contract we're about to sign with Helios, whose signature will appear on the technical specifications? I I don't know, I admitted. Probably Warren's, as department head. She shook her head. That won't work for us. The person who designed this system must sign off on it. That would be you, correct? Yes, but. No buts. If you built it, you sign it. That's non-negotiable. Accountability matters at Meridian. She handed me her business card. My direct line is on the back. If there's any issue with this requirement, call me immediately. That night, sleep didn't come. I kept replaying the meeting, Warren's expression, Rielel's unexpected intervention. By morning, I'd made a decision that had been forming for 8 long years. I dressed carefully, not in the muted grays and blacks that let me disappear inside Helios's male-dominated halls, but in a deep blue suit I'd bought years earlier and never had the courage to wear. As expected, I was summoned to Warren's office first thing. He was already mid-tirade when I stepped inside, the most unprofessional display I've ever seen. You undermined the entire team. Made us look disorganized. I told the truth, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. You don't understand how this works, Avery. This is business. No one succeeds alone. You're part of a team. A team that was taking credit for my work, I cut in. His expression darkened. This attitude is exactly why you're not ready for client-facing roles. You're too emotional, too focused on individual recognition. Rielel Takahashi wants my signature on the technical specifications, I said. That stopped him instantly. What? Meridian requires that the person who designed the system sign off on the technical specs. That's me. Warren's expression shifted from anger to calculation so fast it was almost humorous. Well, that's just a formality. You'll sign as the technical lead under my overall approval. I took a steady breath. I'll sign it, but only under certain conditions. He laughed, sharp and humorless. That's not how this works. It is now, I replied, pulling out a document I'd drafted the night before. These are my terms. First, my role as lead architect will be formally acknowledged in all project documentation and communications. Second, I'll lead the implementation team. Third, I want a 15% raise effective immediately, which still puts me below Darren and Marcus, by the way. Warren's face reddened. This is extortion. This is negotiation, I corrected. You need my signature. Meridian won't move forward without it. And unlike yesterday, today I understand my worth. I could fire you for this, he threatened. You could, I agreed. But then you'd have to explain to Rielel Takahashi why the person who built the system she's investing $5.8 million in is suddenly unavailable. I doubt that conversation would go well for you or for Helios. He stared at me with open hostility. I always knew you'd be trouble. Women like you always are. I smiled then, feeling something settle inside me for good. You haven't seen trouble yet, Warren. This is just me finally claiming my seat at the table. You have until end of day to accept my terms. After that, I call Rielel directly. I walked out of Warren's office with my legs trembling but my head held high. Anyone watching would have assumed I was calm, composed. Inside, I was terrified. 8 years of keeping my head down, of being the good employee who never complained, and I had just blown it all up in 15 minutes. My phone buzzed as I reached my desk. A text from my sister Nora. Did you talk to him yet? What happened? I typed back. I did it. Gave him my terms. Now we wait. 3 dots appeared, vanished, reappeared. Finally. Holy. I'm proud of you. Terrified but proud. Warren didn't make me wait long. By noon, HR summoned me to a meeting with Vanessa Kruger, the department head, and Warren himself. Their expressions told me everything before anyone even spoke. The conference room felt cold, almost surgical, as I sat down across from them. Avery, Vanessa began, her tone professionally flat. We've reviewed your requests regarding the Meridian project. My terms, I corrected quietly. A flicker of annoyance crossed her face. Your terms, then. While we appreciate your contributions, your handling of this situation has been inappropriate and borders on insubordination. Warren remained silent, a small, smug smile tugging at his lips. However, Vanessa continued, given the client's specific request and our timeline pressures, we're prepared to make certain accommodations. The accommodations were laughable. They'd recognize me as a key technical contributor, but not lead architect. I could join the implementation team, but wouldn't lead it. And instead of the raise, they offered a 5% performance bonus. This is our final offer, Vanessa said, pushing a document across the table. We need your signature on the Meridian specs by end of day. I looked at the paper, then at Warren's triumphant expression, then back at the document. 8 years of moments like this flashed through my mind, watching male colleagues with half my qualifications leapfrog past me, sitting through meetings where my ideas were dismissed until a man repeated them, being labeled difficult when I was simply being thorough. No, I said, sliding the paper back. Those aren't the terms I outlined. Warren's smile evaporated. For God's sake, Avery, be reasonable. I've been reasonable for 8 years, I replied. It hasn't gotten me anywhere. Vanessa's polished facade slipped just enough to reveal irritation. Think very carefully about your next step. This is a career-defining project. You don't want to be remembered as the person who derailed it over ego. I almost laughed. My ego. After watching my whole team inflate themselves with my work. My terms stand, I said, rising. You have until 5 p.m. I walked out, shut the door behind me, and immediately locked myself in a bathroom stall where I had what could only be described as a silent panic attack. What was I doing? I was risking everything. My job, my reputation, my financial security. All because I couldn't swallow my pride one more time. But it wasn't pride, was it? It was dignity. It was truth. It was finally admitting that I deserved better than being used and discarded. By late afternoon, at 4:47 p.m., just as I was debating whether to call Ryalel Takahashi, Vanessa appeared beside my desk. We've reevaluated, she said tightly. Your conditions are acceptable, with slight adjustments. She handed me an updated document. They had agreed to name me lead architect and allow me to head the implementation team. The raise was 12%, not the 15% I'd asked for, but it was still far better than the original insult of an offer. We expect you to navigate this transition with professionalism, she added, an unmistakable warning in her tone. No gloating, no stirring tension within the team. I've always been professional, I replied as I signed the agreement. That's never been the actual problem here. That evening, I celebrated with Nora over Thai takeout in my apartment. I can't believe you actually pulled it off, she said, lifting her wine glass. To my sister, who finally developed a backbone. I've always had one, I shot back. I just stopped bending it. So, what now? She asked. Isn't Warren going to make your life miserable? I nodded thoughtfully. Probably. But something's shifted, Nora. I'm not scared anymore. The following weeks proved me both right and wrong. Warren didn't torment me. He erased me. He spoke around me, through me, past me, but never directly to me. In meetings, he behaved as though my seat was unoccupied. The only sign he remembered I existed came through impossible deadlines and midnight emails demanding immediate replies. Meanwhile, I received the official recognition as lead architect on the Meridian project. My name was now on all the formal documentation. I assembled my implementation team with intention, bringing in 2 junior female developers who had talent but had consistently been passed over. And each week, I had a dedicated call with Riel Takahashi to brief her on our updates. Those conversations became my anchor, the one place where my expertise wasn't questioned, where I didn't have to fight for basic acknowledgement. 3 months into implementation, something unexpected happened. Rael asked to meet for coffee during her visit to the city. We met at a quiet cafe far from Helios headquarters, and she got straight to the point. "Your work on our system has been outstanding," she said after minimal pleasantries. "The implementation is ahead of schedule, and the early indicators exceed projections. But I have concerns about the project." "About the project?" I asked, puzzled. "About you," she clarified. "Every time we talk, I can feel the atmosphere you're operating in. It isn't sustainable. Avery, someone with your ability shouldn't constantly be battling for basic respect." I didn't know how to respond. I'd grown so used to the hostility at work that I no longer recognized it as abnormal. "Can I be frank?" she continued, not waiting for my answer. "Helios is wasting you, and based on everything I saw in that presentation room, nothing there is going to improve." She set a business card on the table. Not her personal card this time, one from Meridian's CTO, Julian Chen. "We're developing a new innovation division," she said. "Julian needs a director to lead it." She paused. "Your name came up in our discussions." My coffee cup froze midway to my mouth. "You want me to join Meridian?" "We want you to lead a team at Meridian," she corrected, "with the proper title, compensation, and authority. No more scrambling for leftovers, Avery." The offer was staggering. Double my current salary, company equity, and a leadership position reporting directly to the CTO. It was everything I had spent years working toward, everything Helios had repeatedly denied me. "I need time to think about it," I said, my thoughts spinning. "And I still have the Helios implementation to finish." "Of course," Rael replied. "We're not expecting you to abandon your team. Complete the rollout, but remember, this door is open." I walked back toward the Helios building in a daze, the business card practically burning through my pocket. For the first time in years, I felt something volatile. Hope. That hope carried me through the next 2 months of Warren's silent war, through the sly remarks from coworkers who resented my new authority, through the exhaustion of leading the implementation while being deliberately undercut. The system launched right on schedule. It ran flawlessly. The Meridian leadership was ecstatic. At the launch celebration, Riel publicly recognized me as the architect and implementation lead behind the project that would reshape their entire company. Warren stood sulking in the corner, scowling as she handed me a formal commendation. Everyone applauded. Almost no one met my gaze except my small implementation team, who looked at me with genuine pride for what we had achieved together. The following day, I turned in my resignation. 2 weeks later, I walked out of Helios for the final time. No farewell gathering, no warm send-off, just the quiet relief of escaping. On my first day at Meridian, Julian Chen gave me a walkthrough of my new division. "Build your team however you like," he said. "You have the budget for 12 people to start." "I already know exactly who I want," I answered. Within a month, I had recruited 4 people from Helios, including the 2 junior developers I had guided through the implementation. They weren't the only ones eager to leave. After my exit, the dam burst. People who had been silently enduring their own misery reached out, asking whether Meridian had openings. I couldn't hire everyone, but I could listen. I could validate what they'd gone through. I could connect them with companies in my network. And gradually, a community formed. Refugees from toxic workplaces, holding each other up, recommending opportunities, rebuilding confidence. 6 months after I left, Helios lost the Archer contract, their second largest client, to a competitor using Meridian's new supply chain system, our system, my system. A year after my departure, Warren was quietly demoted. The official explanation was restructuring, but industry whispers told the real story. Too many skilled people had fled his department. Too many projects had slipped behind. The spark that once made his group Helios's prize division had evaporated. 2 years after I walked away, I was invited to speak at a Women in Tech conference about innovation in supply chain management. From the stage, I recognized familiar faces in the crowd. Former Helios colleagues who had found better roles, who had finally stopped settling for less than they were worth. And at the very back, looking older and noticeably uneasy, sat Warren. Helios had sent him to scout new technologies after their innovation pipeline had dried up. Our eyes met briefly across the packed room. I didn't smile. I didn't scowl. I simply acknowledged him with a small nod before returning to my presentation. That moment wasn't about revenge. It was about something far greater: indifference. He no longer held the power to hurt me, to diminish me, to make me question my worth. After my talk, a young developer approached, clutching a notebook nervously. "Your story inspired me," she said. "I'm in a situation at work. It's like you described. My ideas, my code, but somehow never my credit." I recognized the fear in her eyes, the doubt, the confusion, the slow erosion of confidence. "What's your name?" I asked. "Zoe," she replied. "Listen closely, Zoe," I said, taking her hands gently. "What they're doing isn't just unfair, it's theft. Your work has value, your voice has value, and you have choices." I shared the story of Rielel's coffee shop offer, the mix of fear and exhilaration I felt when I finally stood up for myself, and the network of support I found on the other side. "It won't be easy," I warned her, "but staying is harder in ways you don't even notice until you've walked away." "How do I start?" she asked. I smiled, thinking back to my first step. "By realizing that your silence has been protecting the wrong people." 3 years after leaving Helios, my division at Meridian accounted for 22% of the company's growth. I led a team of 34 brilliant, diverse developers who understood their worth and whose contributions were celebrated, not stolen. 5 years after that pivotal presentation, I received an email that made me laugh out loud in my corner office. It was from a recruitment firm, reaching out on behalf of Helios Innovations. They were searching for a new VP of technology, someone who could revive their innovation culture and lead them into a new era. I politely declined the interview, but I forwarded the position to several qualified women in my network, with a detailed note on exactly what they should demand in salary negotiations. The ultimate revenge wasn't watching Warren fail or Helios stumble. It wasn't even my personal success, though that was gratifying. The real revenge was transforming the system itself, building a community where talent is recognized regardless of gender, where credit is given where it's due, where the next generation of Averys won't face the same battles I did. Some say success is the best revenge. I disagree. The best revenge is creating a world where what happened to you can't happen to someone else. It's using your hard-won power to hold the door open behind you. It's turning pain into purpose. Do I still think about that day in the conference room, standing against the wall, watching others claim my work? Of course. Some wounds leave scars that never fully fade. But those scars remind me who I was, who I've become, and why I do what I do today. So let me ask you, have you ever had your work stolen? Your contributions erased? Your value questioned? Share in the comments. Not just what happened, but what you did about it. Your story matters. Your experience matters. And if you're watching this from a place that feels like my old life, undervalued, overlooked, slowly disappearing, know there is another way. It begins with recognizing your worth. It continues with finding your voice. And it never, ever ends with settling for less than you deserve. Subscribe if this resonated with you. There are more stories to tell, more battles to fight, more victories to celebrate. And trust me, the view from the other side is worth every terrifying step of the journey.